Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our latest HR check-in. My name is Christina Krischbaum. I'm with the Nonprofit Partnership and very happy to be here today with you. And the Nonprofit Partnership is grateful to continue to provide services for all of your organizations through this pandemic and beyond. And we're so grateful to continue working with Ann Laguzza of the Works Consulting for our so far weekly check-ins. We'll have some updates and some announcements on the weekly part coming up, but really looking forward to today when we have been doing our check-ins lately and our webinars. Something that we're hearing from a lot of people is this feeling of being overwhelmed. And so when we talk to Ann about how we can address that, we're looking for some key tips to help you and your staff decompress, de-stress, and feel less overwhelmed by all that's happening, especially as our situation continues to evolve. So we also want to say thank you to the Josephine S. Gumbiner Foundation for providing the funding for these check-ins and our webinars so we can continue to provide them to you for free during this pandemic. Without their support, we would not be able to do this, so we're so grateful to them. And without further ado, I want to pop it on over to Ann because I know that we have some great content for you today and some announcements. And just to remind everybody, if you have any questions or comments or you want to share anything with us, please post them in that Q&A box. We will answer them throughout the session, but also follow up with you if there's anything particular for your organization. So Ann, you ready? Take it away.
Yeah, I'm ready. Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, like Christina said, my name's Ann Laguzza. I'm with the Works Consulting, and it is my pleasure to be here to speak to you today with doing our HR check-in. So if this is your first one, what we normally do is I run through 20 minutes to 30 minutes or so of content of what we think is relevant based on what we're hearing. And then I leave the end portion open for whatever questions you have. And as always, they can be related to the topic that I'm talking about or anything related to human resources or leadership. We just want to open it up to you so we can provide you support that you need during this time. These have been really great to provide weekly. And I know, like Christina said, she'll have some updates for you at the end of what our plan is to do next. So one of the things that I am telling you, so what I usually base these topics on is what am I hearing, right? What are the most common comments I'm getting both on social media from my clients, et cetera. And I'm hearing so much about people feeling overwhelmed and just feeling like they're not really getting that much accomplished and what direction they go in. And there's so much news and information, et cetera. So that is what we want to talk about today is, are you feeling overwhelmed? So I would normally say if we were in person, by show of hands, how many are feeling overwhelmed? So you can just raise your hand if you're feeling overwhelmed, maybe a little bit stressed out. I want to tell you first that that's totally normal and you're not alone. And if you think for 1 second you're the only person, I guarantee you you're not. Like I mentioned, pretty much every call I have with every client, there is time set out for them to talk a little bit about how they're feeling, and most are feeling the exact same way. As a reminder, we do have the Q&A box open for you during the webinar. If you would please put your questions in there throughout. I typically get to them at the very end, but anything that comes up while I'm talking and you're like, oh, I have a question about that, just write it in there and then I will definitely get to it. And as I reminded everybody kind of at the beginning is if you would follow all of us, the partnership, myself on any and all of our social media channels, we'd really appreciate that. Because that way we continue to give you great information in between these sessions and we can stay in contact with you and you can stay in contact with us. So it just makes it really easy. Okay, so I got to close my little Q&A box here. Sorry, I had it open just in case. So one of the things we're going to address here is not only, kind of defining being overwhelmed and burned out and all of that, but what are 5 strategies to overcome overwhelm? Because I don't want you to leave without actually some tips and tools today. So as you know, that's what I always try to present for you in every webinar we have is a good walk-away plan is what I like to call it, is what are you going to walk away with? And I think you will not be disappointed today either, because I have some ones for you. So first, I just want to talk about a little bit about the definition of burnout, that it's a syndrome characterized by high emotional exhaustion, high depersonalization, like cynicism, and a low sense of personal accomplishment. And I think that low sense of personal accomplishment is what I'm hearing so much about. People just feeling like gosh, am I moving anything forward? Every day it just feels like I'm treading water. Maybe it feels a little bit like that, hamster wheel that people talk about. And a lot of leaders are just feeling like they're hanging on. There is so much uncertainty right now and so many things that are out of your control. So, there's business just in general, or a customer, or whatever your title is for it. You might lose a grant as a nonprofit. You might, you might find out that you can't be in your building any longer because they've sold it. Now you've got to move. There's all kinds of things that are out of our control, but they feel a little more manageable because the pace is more realistic, I guess. And it also is something you almost expect to happen as part of doing business. A pandemic is the first time for all of us. None of us ever expected this to happen. And there is so much information that's constantly shifting that it's almost like just when you feel like you start planning, you get more information. So this is really leading to those feelings of being overwhelmed. And it is, again, as we've talked about here before, very, very unique. So here's some symptoms that I want you to be looking for in terms of, am I feeling overwhelmed, right? So there can be emotional volatility, and this can range from, expressions of anger, losing your temper a little more easily. By the way, this can be at work, it can be at home. If you live by yourself, it could just be personally, you get frustrated. You can't open a jar and you just get like, more frustrated than you normally would. I think I thought of a jar because I was trying to open one the other night, and gosh, I was like, this is really difficult. How am I going to get this thing open? So something like that. You also might feel sad. You might even cry more often than you normally do. So you might feel like that kind of emotional volatility. You have an inability to concentrate or listen, kind of that foggy thinking, difficulty recalling details, trying to remember, who did I talk to yesterday? Or did I send that email? Somebody just this morning before I got on the call, I was following up on something. Oh, never got your email. And I was like, oh my gosh, I thought I sent the email. Did I send the email? And what was so funny is they actually forgot that I sent the email. But I went through the whole, what day was that? I think I sent it Monday. Was that Monday? Was it Tuesday? So it happens, and it happens in normal business, but it's happening even more now. Just difficulty making decisions. And this might even be some of the most basic decisions, things that you felt very confident making before all this happened. And now you're really struggling. Like, what is the right decision? And is this a good decision? And how many people, are going to be affected by this? Numbness or withdrawal from others. You may be feeling less and less like interacting with people. You just feel generally kind of that emotional sort of numbness, like, oh, I just don't really kind of care anymore. I don't know if it doesn't maybe matter what I think or do, because tomorrow things are going to shift and it's not going to, the steps I'm taking today won't be relevant. And then of course there could be physical conditions. And I just listed a few of those. There might be headaches, fatigue, insomnia. There's all other kinds of physical conditions that do come up with leadership overwhelm. So you may not have all of these. You may have one or two. You may not have them every day, right? You may have some weeks where you're feeling good and things are moving right along and you're feeling great. You're like, I got this under control. And then another week comes and you feel overwhelmed. I'm going to share with you my personal experience, just so you know that I too am feeling this, is when we got notification the other day that LA County was going to potentially have to be safer at home till August. I felt that. And we've been really fortunate. Our business has been able to run. We have wonderful clients like many of you on this call. And we are so thankful, but I miss my team and I miss interacting with people and I miss, the social aspect. And just hearing that we may have to go through the summer continuing down that road was just very, very frustrating. And I felt some of these things. So things were going really well. I hear that and it kind of gets me that overwhelmed feeling. So it happens to all of us. I am not unique. So I found, this was just kind of interesting, this Team Blind survey that they did, and they kind of did the pre-COVID-19 and then during COVID-19. So 25.3% of the people they surveyed said they had an unmanageable workload. And some of that's coming from people are picking up additional pieces of work because you've had to lay off people or furlough people. There's increased expectations. 5.7% said they had insufficient rewards, and then 15% felt lack of control over work. Then during COVID, 26.7% said no separation between work and life, which, I mean, that is obviously very true for so many of us. 20.5% said an unmanageable workload. Now, I will have to say that's very close to what it was pre-COVID. So I thought that was interesting, just interesting information to see that people already felt that their workload was unmanageable, maybe for very different reasons, by the way. And then 18.8% now have job security concerns and are really worried about that. One of my clients I talked to yesterday shared with me just in general some resentment employees are having for having to pick up the pieces for other people who are no longer there. Now, it's a weird thing, right? It's like, I'm really thankful I have a job, but I'm also really resentful because I'm being asked to pick up all these extra pieces. I'm not getting extra money. And then actually in that organization, they've decided to do an across the board pay cut to try to, keep things pieced together during this time. So it's tough. It's a tough thing to balance. The other thing I was thinking about this with the separation between work and life is, some people really like a separation between their personal and their professional. And I don't even mean just literally with working in their personal space, but some people like that. Like I get to leave the home, I get to go to work. Maybe I'm even somebody a little different at work. And then I come home and, my home is my home. And now it's all just sort of blended together and meshed together. And, people who are fortunate enough to have a home office or even an extra room in their home that they can set up as an office, that's definitely a bonus. And then there's other people who are just working from their couch or their kitchen table, and there really isn't a lot of separation. So one of the things about overwhelm that's kind of interesting is leaders can hear the same information and have completely different responses. So the difference we have there is their perspectives and also their internal dialogue about the information. So that's why some of you might hear communication, like some of you might have heard that safer at home till August communication, and it was fine, no big deal. And then some of you might have felt overwhelmed like I did. And we just have different experiences. So, our dialogue, our internal dialogue could be based on past experience. It could be our concern for our own well-being. It could be concern for our employment. It could be that I'm taking in the information from my perspective, right? As an employee, as a leader, as a short-term employee, as a long-term employee, right? There's so many things that affect our perspective and how we view information. So kind of a simple example of this I'm going to give you is that I'll use an email communication example as one where I was coaching a leader on effective communication with one of her team members. She was trying to be better at communicating. So one of the things she would do is filter emails through me before she would send it back to this person because they had had so many miscommunications. And one day she sent me this email and literally said, "Oh my gosh, look, she's yelling at me and she's also demeaning me." And it was so interesting because I read the exact same email, and because I don't have any relationship with this person, she has no bearing on whether I continued my contract or not. I read it so differently, and I didn't hear any of the things that the person I'm coaching heard. So that's the reminder that we all have like a different lens that we're looking through. And so it's okay. One of the reasons I bring this up is it's okay. Overwhelm and someone else says this is no big deal, that don't let that put more pressure on you. It's okay that you feel differently about it because you're experiencing it differently than they are. However, I do use those people to help me. So when I see that someone's handling a situation a little better than I am and I'm feeling overwhelmed, I reach out to those people because I want to know, let me hear it from your perspective. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking about this? Because maybe that'll help me and decrease my stress level. Okay, so you can definitely use those people to help you. Okay, so let's talk about some contributors to overwhelm, and then we will talk about the strategies. Okay, I want to first say, here's some things that could contribute. So as a leader, you are the go-to person. Oh, you may be the go-to person not only for the team, but you might be the go-to person for the entire organization. It's like you have to have all the answers because you're the leader. And then who do you turn to, right? So in some of your organizations, I know you don't have a lot of people on your team. And so who do you go to for questions? And we are going to talk a little bit about the strategy for that. But who do you go to for questions, just in general, to get information like, oh my gosh, I heard something new about some restriction we have to put in the office, but is it true? Isn't it true? A lot of you go to Google first and you find 5 or 6 conflicting answers. And then you're like, now where do I go? Right? So you have to have those resources. And then you also need support. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the strategy in a little bit, but leaders need support. I mean, I firmly believe leaders have needed support forever, but you need support more now than ever, because people are looking to you. They're looking to you for sort of that sense of calmness, knowledge, and that can create overwhelm for sure, because that sort of that pressure of responsibility keeps falling to you. So you feel it, right? Because everyone's sort of looking to you to have the answers. And by the way, just a reminder, a lot of us do not have the answers to a lot of things that are getting asked right now. I say I don't know more in the last like 2 or 3 months than I've said in my entire career. I mean, there are certainly things that have come across my desk in 29 years that I didn't know the answer to and needed to call my support system, right? Which are attorneys typically. And in the last month or two, I've had more questions come across my desk that I didn't know. And then I reached out to my go-to people and they didn't know. And so we had to sit there and try to see if we could figure out what the best answer would be so that the client could do something, they could take some action. So it's happening. Another cause of overwhelm might be, you're fearful too, right? You're a human being. You've got a fear of change. You've got a fear of failing. You've got a fear of upsetting others. You might have to be delivering some bad news day to day or week to week. You may have the responsibility of impacting other employees' lives or livelihoods, maybe we should say, in terms of maybe you have to cut their salary, like I just mentioned another organization did. Maybe you're going to cut their hours. Maybe you have to furlough them. Maybe you're going to be able to bring them back, but you're not going to be able to bring them back to the same schedule they were at. So again, it's like there's this expectation that leaders aren't afraid. But of course you're afraid. You're real people. You lead teams too. And that's the only addition, right? So and some of you are writing in the Q&A right now. I mean, feel free right now to pop in what some of the fears are that you have. And if you'll write one of my fears is, and you can put it in there, I would love to know that for later on. And I won't say your name, don't worry. But I'm just curious, like what other fears you have. But this creates, leaders feeling overwhelmed because they're fearful too. But it's almost like, no, you're not supposed to have fear. You're the leader, but absolutely you do. And trust me, again, I will continue to use myself in this situation because I am going through this with all of you. I lead a company. I am a leader. I help lots of people. I help lots of leaders, and I have fears as well. Of course. I mean, this whole thing has been just kind of that roller coaster moment. Okay, another thing that might lead to your overwhelm are those challenging team members, which I know if you've spent any time with me, we've talked about these people a lot. But you may find that you're not getting information you need because someone's not keeping you informed, and that leads you to feeling overwhelmed. You may have to work with someone who's passive aggressive or argumentative, and that's just kind of the last thing you need right now, right? You really need somebody who's solution-centered and not problem-centered. And that's draining to have to deal with that every single time. Every time you have to deliver bad news, or not even bad news. It's funny, sometimes what I'm finding in some of the teams with the leaders I'm talking to is because work dialed back a little bit, people almost got kind of, I don't want to say casual, but it was almost like a casual feel, like, okay, great. We're not working maybe as hard. We've dialed it back. And then now things are starting to ramp up, and it's like they're having a tough time getting their team members to ramp up. Like some of the team members are actually frustrated with the fact that things are ramping up. So very interesting, by the way. So, you want to, I know you're going to, you want to be surrounded by people who are solution oriented. And then you also might find that people aren't accountable. And this might be your peers and your direct reports. They're not taking responsibility for what they should be doing. They're also not taking on sort of that, if they made a mistake, they're not owning up to it. They're not helping. They're not being part of the solution. So it's all very frustrating for any leader, by the way, in any time, but definitely right now. Okay, I love that some of you are putting your fears out there. Feel free to keep doing that. I'm fine with that. Things you're afraid of, because that's a great conversation that we can talk about. Exhaustion, right? Like, who's tired? Raise your hand. Okay. I just think I figured out a new way to get a full night's sleep, but I'm so excited about it. So, you often are carrying the weight of your team or the entire organization in addition to yourself, right? You've got your own stuff going on and now you're carrying everybody else's, right? And that physical and that mental fatigue is draining. So if you're not getting a good night's rest, it's like compounding and you're just finding yourself. So you wake up, maybe you don't feel quite as excited to jump out of bed. You're not as motivated and you're tired and you're finding yourself, maybe at 3 o'clock grabbing that extra caffeine boost because you're exhausted. And then that sometimes can even create a crazy, kind of situation that starts to happen where you're grabbing caffeine to get a boost or some sugar to get a boost. And then that puts you on the up and then the down and all that. So, or maybe you have difficulty falling asleep if you have caffeine too late. I'm definitely one of those people. I have to be careful about when I have caffeine. It can make you unable to cope with the smallest challenge or decision because you're so tired. And you just might find it difficult to inspire others. I know I've been talking a lot to you about inspiring your team and really keeping them engaged. That's hard work. And you add exhaustion on top of it or just being tired, it makes it feel even harder. You probably look at some of those things I've given you to do and you're like, I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm tired. And I think you got to get real about how you're feeling and then try to see if you can come up with some solutions to get that sleep in. And again, I'm going to give you some strategies. It is exhausting to be on Zoom calls. We got so excited about doing Zoom calls that everything turned into Zoom call. It's a lot because you have to be on if someone's seeing you. Maybe choose a few phone calls here and there. Maybe, email's fine. We don't have to jump on a Zoom call for everything. You're putting out so much and then you don't really have anywhere to get your input back, right? You're like replenish all that output. So it's like at the leader, you're outward constantly. And you need to be able to get something back so that you can feel good and ready to go. I was going to share with you, I know what it was. I was going to share with you that I did on an IG story recently where I said, I'm always telling all my leaders to check in with your teams and I'm constantly giving you guys questions to ask your teams. And, I talk about those, bi-weekly milestone meetings that you should be having every 10 or for 10 minutes, every 2 weeks. And it kind of occurred to me that, hey, who's checking on the leaders? So I put out in the story that to say, hey, you know what, do me a favor today, reach out to your supervisor and ask them, one, how are they doing? And two, what can I do to support you? Right? And just those 2 questions, that was it. I got so much feedback. It was so great. And so many people did it, which is always fun when that happens. And their feedback was, hey, you know what? My leader said they were fine. They said they didn't need any support. However, they told me how much they appreciated that I checked in with them. And I love that because that was my intention. I mean, I know as a leader, a lot of times you may not know how your direct report can support you, or it might not even be appropriate, right? Something that you're dealing with. It's on an appropriate level for them to support you in that way. But I knew that there would be an appreciation because it feels good to be checked in on. That's why I'm constantly telling you to do that to your employees. And, for that day, I kind of wanted everybody to flip it around. So it's kind of fun to have that manage up moment, if you will. Okay, so let's talk about these strategies because I promised you that I would give you some, and I'm absolutely going to give you some so you can walk away from the webinar with some strategies that you can do right away. So one of the things is you really need to build resilience. And so this is where you're able to really manage your thoughts directly and in how they affect your mood, because then you can manage your thoughts, it affects your mood. If you can think more positively, it absolutely affects your mood. When you can think about things being hopeful and achievable and that we're going to be okay, it affects your mood, right? The reverse is also true. If I focus on the negative and how terrible things are, and I even say things like that, like, oh, it's just so terrible, or we're never going to be able to hug each other again, we're never going to be able to be back to the way it was. Those things affect your mood. So resilient leaders are able to manage those feelings, and it makes them be able to move faster and more strategically because they spend less time sort of dwelling on what's missing and what's bad and thinking about what could happen and then how do they get to that. So they handle difficult situations, events, and people much better. And like I said, they always have that confidence that they're going to get through. So I'm going to give you sort of an example of resilience, because it's like, well, how do I build resilience, Anne? So I rode my bicycle from San Francisco to LA a number of years ago. It's 575 miles or so, just so you know. And I rode with 200 other people for an arthritis organization. And so my goal when I left, it was 8 days we rode. My goal when I left was to never get in what's called a SAG van. And the SAG van, for those of you who don't know, it's a van that they give you bicycle support. They have food on board, water. And one of the things they do is they pick you up if you either can't ride anymore. So you've reached a breaking point where you're just done for the day, or they have a certain time of day that you have to come in, because they can't have you out there on the road all night. It's dangerous. It's not safe, all of that. So while the event's going, they have certain hours that they do the event, and the SAG van's constantly going around. Well, day one, when we left San Francisco, was an 85-mile bicycle ride that day to our first rest stop. And my goal, like I said, when I went out on this ride, was I'm never getting in that van. I never had done an organized ride like this before. This was my first one, but I said, I'm never getting in that van. So day one, 85 miles. I'm a very slow rider. I was definitely slower at that time. The sun is starting to set. I'm riding with somebody I just met that day, and here comes the van. And they stopped and they said, how are you doing? And I'm like, I'm fine, right? And the guy I'm riding with, actually, he was a little bit better rider than me, but he was riding with me to keep me company, which I appreciated. I said, I'm fine. And they said, well, listen, the sun's going down. You have about an hour to get in. And if you can't get in by then we're going to come pick you up. Okay. So they drove away, and I look at this guy and I'm like, there is no way I'm getting in that van. And he's like, okay, Animal, we're going for it. We are going to ride as hard as, like, dig as deep as you can right now. You are exhausted. You know, we'd been in the sun all day. You ride as hard as you can. And we made it. Okay. So he coached me in verbally all the way till we got into camp, and we barely made it. I mean, they were coming out again. It was really funny. When I rolled in, they were getting ready to come out again. So here's the reason I tell you that story. I overcame something that I was going to make it in time. I had no idea, but I was going to try as hard as I could. So the thing that I want to say about that, sorry, you guys, I'm getting a little internet unstable here. I think we're good again. The thing that I want to say about that is something that I was so hard to do, that I had to dig deeper in that moment than I had ever dug in my entire life at that point. Now, I've had other things that happened since then for sure, but that was really hard. So I know I can do it. And that's what you need to pull from. You need to think about that event in your life. It can be personal. It can be professional. Maybe it's not as big as that. Maybe it's a little smaller, whatever it is, but something where you thought, how am I getting through this? And then you made it through. Because that is how you build resilience. Because now I know what I'm capable of doing. And I'm like, you know what? And if I'm like, hey, I rode 575 miles, I can do this, right? So there's things like that. That happens to me all the time, where I reference back something I accomplished, and that reminds me that I'm going to get through. So that's what I want you to do, is think about those situations. Everybody has a situation you got through that you were not sure how you were going to get through when you started, but you made it to the other side. And whatever the other side looked like, even if it wasn't exactly what you thought it was going to look like. Hey, I didn't think I was going to get in, at dark and barely be able to take a shower before I got into my tent. And I still had to set up my tent when I got to camp, by the way. They didn't do that for us. So I still had a lot to do. I missed dinner. They had hardly any food left. That wasn't my plan when I started, but I made it. Okay. So that's what I want you to think about. Resilience is a big one, because you are tough enough to get through situations. You are, for sure. So just keep that in mind. Second strategy for you is to develop trust, right? So this is going to go back to some other things. For those of you who've been on my webinars, you've heard me talk about. So, this is a moment, like, have you built a team that can take over and can help you so that you're not the only go-to and you're not the only person? Do they understand their goals and their vision? Do they even get them if you have a temporary vision right now? You have to make sure you have the right people on your team. And I know we've talked about this before, hiring the best, holding them accountable, right, to expectations, removing people who shouldn't be part of your team, and then building them up with the knowledge and responsibility so you can rely on them during tough times. So perhaps you haven't set yourself up perfectly for the situation we're in, but you can look at your team members now, and even if you only have one you can count on, that's okay. Count on that one to help you, right? And count on them to take some of the burden. And where can you have them help you so that it's not all falling on you all the time? Where can you delegate some responsibility? Even if you think, wow, this is really going to be a stretch for them, ask them for that help. Your top performers will be loving to support you. I'll tell you, I have two amazing performers on my team. And when everything started to really get crunch time around here, they both said, what can we take off your plate? And I was like, well, I don't feel like there is anything. And they're like, stop. Go through your to-do list. Let us help you. And they literally said, I can do that. I can do that. I'll figure it out, Anne. I'll figure it out, or I can at least get it started for you and get it back to you. And then you can finish it. So ask for help. And even if you only have one person, it's just going to make your job so much easier to have those right people on the team. So reestablish expectations with everyone now. That's what you can do now. Make sure everyone has clarity. Make sure you ask for help. You're starting to build for the long run. I know a lot of you are thinking short term, but I want you to start thinking long term now. So, okay, we had whoever we had on our team. Maybe there were some people we should have made decisions about, but we didn't. Now we've got the team we have, and whatever that looks like. Now I got to start thinking about going forward. And this is how you do it. You establish those expectations. You meet with them regularly. You ask them for help. You allow them to show up. You let them grow. It's good for them as well as it's good for you. Okay, work on one task at a time. Okay, I'm going to tell you, this is a hard one for me, and especially based on my DISC score. If you're a DISC, I'm an ID, and wow, and I'm a very low S. So that means I'm really not good at one thing at a time. And I am practicing this right now. So multitasking actually has negative consequences over time. And I actually just read an article this morning, not related to this, that just happened to bring this up, where it said it decreases your IQ by 15 points or something like that. It was really, I was like, whoa, it was in Fast Company magazine. So it's not, even though I know people say, oh, I'm a good multitasker, believe it or not, it contributes to overwhelm. And one of the best things you can do to get out of it is to focus on one task at a time, to really complete it successfully and feel good about that. And you want to dedicate time on your calendar to each task. So you take your tasks that you've got, figure out how much time you're going to spend on them, and really focus in. And you're going to have to be realistic with how much you can get completed. One of the sort of tips that I use, I'm going to give you, is I pick 3 to 5 things that I'm going to get done every single day. And for me, sometimes I have the little animal there. Sometimes they're a combination of personal and professional. So I work out almost every day. That's on my list, right? But then professionally, there's some things I want to get accomplished also. The reason I say just pick 3 to 5, because I know some of you are like, oh yeah, I have a to-do list. It's 30 items long. At the end of every day, and by the way, this is that you did it or you didn't do it. It's not a halfway thing, okay? So it's not like, oh, I kind of did that. But by the end of every day, I can knock off some of those things off that list. It gives me that feeling of accomplishment. And if you remember in the beginning, we talked about the definition, and that like not having that feeling of accomplishment is part of why when you feel burnout and overwhelmed. So it gives you a feeling of accomplishment. Sure, you might not have finished everything you had planned, but if you can cross off some of those things, it's so great. There is some of you may know, his name's Andy Frisella, but it's called a power list. He talks very much about that, but that's basically what it's about. So just to give him credit for and I'm sure there's other people who've talked about it as well, but it's a great thing that I use just to give me that feeling like, okay, I did get some things done. Because you get to the end of the day and you're looking around at your desk and you're thinking, wow, I'm tired. What did I get done? And you're trying to remember, did I get anything done? And then usually where we go is, what didn't I get done? Oh my gosh, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. Right. Instead, where you could say, okay, I listed 5 things. I got 3 done, give yourself sort of a little applause, pat on the back, or whatever it is. And you can get going again the next day. I also will tell you to help me work on one task at a time. I reworked my entire schedule. So I do things very differently now. I have dedicated time to reading emails. I have dedicated project time, and I have dedicated phone call time, where that's where I actually interact with clients and connect with them. So I reworked my schedule. So it might be time for you to take a look at that. And if you're having trouble with that, reach out to somebody who's good with their schedule. You know people, maybe there's someone on your team, maybe there's another leader on this call. You can reach out to another executive director or leader of their organization and find out what they're doing. Because there's lots of people that have amazing tips on how to manage their time, and something else will work for you. Be proactive, number 4. So we spend a lot of time reacting, especially in a crisis situation. And I don't know about you, but my goodness, I think the first 4 weeks were easily about reaction. But now it's time to start taking control and getting that higher level view and looking kind of over everything and say, what can we plan for? What are the contingency plans we need to have in place? I know we don't necessarily know when, for some of us, we don't necessarily know when we're going to be returning to the office. And, I said to my coach yesterday, I said, gosh, sometimes I feel like I should just plan on it being December. And she said, why don't you? And I was like, oh, that's kind of a great idea. I don't know why I'm not doing that, because yes, my employees would like to be back in the office personally. We've had a discussion about that. They would like to go back to the office. I like to work from my office. I mean, this is fine working from home. I'm equally productive, but I like to go to an office. It's nice. And so, but at the same time, wow, if I just think about it, like instead of just keep waiting for when LA County is going to announce the next, month that we can get back to work in kind of a regular sense, what if I just planned it was December, and how would that change things? And how does that relieve stress for me? And does that make things easier? It just might, right? So be open to those kinds of possibilities. It's a little hard to keep up with the day-to-day sometimes. So try to think a little longer term, and maybe you have a couple plans, and you're just like, okay, if this happens, then we'll do this. And then if this happens, this is our plan. And that's what we're sticking with now until we get more information. And if we get more information and we need to adjust our plans, we'll adjust our plans. But try to get into the proactive mode instead of the reactive mode. And that'll definitely help you. Okay, number 5. So this kind of goes back to that exhaustion that I was talking about. Please do something for you. What do you love to do? Like, what do you love to do that you can still do right now? Because I know there's some things I love to do that I can't do. So I went on a bicycle ride last Saturday. I love to ride my bicycle. It is my favorite thing to do. And I was so happy that I had the chance to do it. Do you like to go on a walk? Do you have a podcast that you like to listen to? Do you have pages, maybe 10 pages you want to read of a favorite book? Do you like to watch the sunset? What are things you love to do? And just do one of those things every day. And make that commitment to yourself. Like, I am going to commit to myself that I do one thing just for me every single day. Now, we might be inclined to bring somebody else with us. You might have to bring somebody else with you, because if you're taking care of small children, you may have to. But I'm going to say that if you can do something just for you that doesn't involve anyone else one time a day, that's what I'm going to encourage you to do, because that will give you the most sort of rejuvenation and the sense of feeling good and like you can do it again the next day. Sometimes when we share things with people, although, I have some of my most favorite people I love to share things with, but you have to make space for them too, right? And they're going to have questions or comments or things that they want to look at or do, and it detracts from what your focus is, which is you. So try to put the focus on you one time a day. It doesn't have to be long. Find something you love and just commit to that one time a day. Okay, because I love to do these webinars, I had to give you a bonus one, which is seek support. And I had to mention this, especially because we talked about where are you going for questions and who are you getting support from? So this is your bonus tip. So very few leaders seek out support to improve their skills. However, they really want the opportunities to do so. I talk to so many leaders that are like, oh my gosh, I love to go to workshops and I love, I would love to have a coach, or I do have a coach and I love it. Group learning is fantastic. Like, these webinars are a great place for you to do some learning. If you can go to any trainings, those are great. But then you need to be able to take what you learn and bring it into your workspace. And I have found that coaching is the way to do that. So I think that that's something you really need to look at personally, is can you put in a coaching program for you as a leader? It doesn't have to be every month. How do you get the support you need to minimize burnout? And you can reach out to somebody who's not a coach, but if it's your friend or your family member, a lot of times they're not going to be as tough on you as they should be. And they also might not be as celebratory with you as they could be. Oops, sorry, you guys. So that's important, right? Because what I say about the way I coach people is, hey, I'm one of your biggest critics, right? I'm going to be tough on you when it's appropriate. I'm going to be honest, but I am also always in your corner. I am your biggest fan. I want you to win. I want you to succeed. I want to be the best all the time. So that's what I provide, right? So sometimes people that are really close to us struggle with that. Who can provide you objective feedback, who isn't tied into your raises, your performance reviews, you're not going to necessarily see at the next family gathering, that it could be uncomfortable, or you could wonder if maybe friends, they're not always so confidential and they're going to tell people what you're struggling with. So I say, try to find somebody supportive. If you can't do actual coach, then find someone else who can fill that need for you, but you really should have somebody that you're reaching out to for support. Before we go to the Q&A piece, is that I'll tell you that when you feel overwhelmed and what it feels like is, I feel like that's 80% of what you need, right? So that's sort of an emotional intelligence piece, is that I can quickly identify when I'm feeling overwhelmed. I know what behaviors I exhibit. I know exactly what it feels like I could describe it to you. I know some of the words that I start to say, and I literally will say, I just can't take any more. Those are words that I say. Feeling a level of overwhelm right now. What is going on? What is it, right? Trying to identify, and then what do I need to do to get to the solution? So you will be a stronger leader if you can at least be aware of when it's happening, even if you don't always know exactly what the solution is. I don't always know what the solution is, but at least if I know there's an awareness, I can sort of go, okay, here's my awareness. Now I got to start either thinking about solutions, or I'm going to maybe table this for a moment while I finish some other things that are not causing me that feeling of overwhelm. And I'm going to get back to that. But the very best leaders have high awareness. And so this is a critical component for you as a leader. So with that, and I'm sorry, it looks like my internet connection, we had a couple of unstable moments there. So I hope you heard everything. With that, we have Q&A time. And so I am going to go through. So I'm going to go through and read questions. You know what? Not necessarily, and I would say I 100% hear you on that.
And I'm sorry, the audio completely cut out on that one. So if you could reread that last question, the audio completely cut out.
Gosh, that's so weird. We always have to have a technical difficulty at some point, I guess, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So the comment here was, overwhelmed doesn't cover it. Depleted is a better term. And I hear you. I completely hear you. I don't know if I have anything else to say about that, but I know that many of you are feeling depleted and just tired, exhausted. So a lot of these strategies really help you try to move from that depleted level up. And I wanted to share with you, it's so funny. I was just going to tell my team that we were going to do this today. And then I read that Google did this, but they gave everybody Friday off, the 22nd, before the 3-day weekend. And I thought, that's a great idea. It feels weird, I think, to some people to give time off, a paid day off, because a lot of people feel like, well, it's easier to work from home, or you're not working as much. But there's something about telling people, take a break. It's okay, right? Take a day off right now, even though I know we don't have a lot of places to go, but take a break. Okay, I'm working from home. Oh my gosh, that's a good one. I know I will have tons of work when I return to work, and that's the anxiety. It will be overloaded to catch up. Yes, that is such a good point. So first of all, not having all the tools to work from home, I relate. I have had to make some adjustments myself, and then I'm actually going into my office this weekend when I know no one will be there, and I'm going to grab some more things that I need. However, I'm going to say this from a leader, those leaders out there, you all are going to really have to help people with workload as people start ramping back up, because I think that's going to be this natural tendency for everyone to like try to do everything and be everything to everybody. And we have to slow that down. We can't have people come back and burn out further, or just, work themselves hours and hours and hours trying to catch up. We're going to really have to help with that. I don't have the answer for that right now, because I'd have to look at each situation and help you, but I'm going to tell you that there are ways to manage that. But just even saying those words like, hey, listen, this is going to be a process. We're going to work through it. I'm asking for people to be patient. That's going to be important. But I hear you on that. That definitely could create anxiety. Okay, so we have a question about sick leave. If an employee's already exercised the use of their 80 hours of sick time, and I think you are saying the emergency paid sick leave, and then they return to work, but later is asked to self-quarantine again, is the employer obligated to pay them another 80 hours of sick? No, that 80 hours of sick, I do not believe you'd be obligated to pay it again, but that's actually a great question. You can see me thinking right now. I am going to find out for you. Will you email me after this is all over? When I say this is all over, when our webinar is done, and I will double check for you, but I do not believe you have to do it again. I think it's 80 hours total for the period of time from now until the end of the year. But I'll just do a quick double check, because things change all the time, right? But I don't think you have to. Oh yeah. Okay, so here's some of the stressors, like having an immune compromised employee and also family members. Like that can definitely add to those feelings of being overwhelmed. The team is almost all new. Oh my gosh, yeah. That is definitely adds to some feeling of overwhelm. And then we have somebody else who wants to know about the emergency sick leave twice. Yeah, I believe it's just, hold on. I'm going to grab my paperwork right while we're all here, since we have a couple minutes. It is, let me just tell you. I think I have it here anyway. They're at least 30 days. Gosh, that's really funny. It doesn't actually really clarify it on here, but my understanding is it's up to 2 weeks, 80 hours, which is, a part-time person obviously gets their prorated amount. And it is, yeah, I'll double check, but I think it is just paid for during that period. They get to use up to 80 hours from April 1st to December 31st. We'll double check. I don't think we had one other question I wanted to address. So one of our early questions was, see, I saw my internet was unstable again, guys. Sorry about that. Okay, so one of the questions we got early on was about templates. And that is going to be one of our next webinars. It will be our next webinar that we have. I'm not gonna actually sit there and just give you templates on the webinar, but I'm actually gonna walk you through steps to create those templates, because a lot of you have been asking, oh, we need a template for this, we need a template for that. So we'll talk about some templates that seem to be commonly needed, and then we will walk you through kind of how to put those together so you can create them and have templates. And I'm hoping by then I might even have a gift template for you that we should have finalized by then. So we will definitely talk about some of the major ones that people have been asking us for. And then a lot of you have been asking for letters about calling people back, and about, I just got one today about decreasing hours and, all of that. So there's a lot of different templates we've been asked for, and we'll talk about the important components that you want to have in those, so you can definitely create those. Okay, I think those are all our questions, Christine, unless I'm missing anything.
No, I
I
think
think
you have
that's
them
it.
there. I do think it's a great idea for those that are still with us. If you have an idea of what particularly you're looking for resources for those templates, I know that Anne probably won't be able to provide them all, but it might help us
Yeah.
narrow down our focus. So if you have an idea of those, if you would send over an email to info@tnpsocal.org, and we will be coordinating, working with Anne for that next follow-up webinar. And just so everybody, just to remind everybody, we won't be meeting next Friday. We'll be meeting the Friday after that. So I believe it's May 29th. Is that correct, Anne?
Yes, I think that is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So
May 29th.
so
Yes.
do not get worried. And if you would still like to to check in with TNP, we'd love to. Hey, we can hold just simple like hello, and just kind of see how you're doing. But definitely email us. Let us know what you're looking for. I do see a couple of those requests coming in through the Q&A right now, but that way we can coordinate with Anne, really get a sense of what the sector is looking for and what we're able to put together within that time frame. And then we will hold our next HR check-in May 29th, same time, so 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. We know that a lot more people are going to be looking at transitioning back to work into June. So
Yeah.
perfect timing for that. And, we'll see what we can provide for you at that point. And I know that a lot of things may kind of shift, focus during that time as well. We don't know what's coming down next week. So as the changes continue to come in, we will continue to adapt. It's a wonderful thing about our agile and nimble sector. So I think that's it. I don't see any further questions coming in. So I think we're just about ready to wrap up. And thank you again.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
This was fantastic as always. Completely appreciate your guidance, your support during this time. And to everyone out there, we know that many of you are working on the front lines. We completely appreciate you. We want you to stay safe and healthy, be well. For those of us that are working from home or working remotely, you also stay safe and be well. I don't know why I'm separating the two at that point. But definitely, hopefully we get to see everybody again in a couple of weeks. And also just, for other occasional, we have workshops going on at TNP. We're setting up another webinar coming up. So we're getting to take a look at what can we have come down the pike. So we will be in touch soon. We know that we'll be in touch with all of you, and looking forward to convening everybody until we can see you all again in person. I keep saying this every time. I'm looking forward to that time. But until then, we look forward to seeing you again online. So everybody have a wonderful weekend. We hope that you enjoy some sunshine. This is for my morning meeting. So it really was. So enjoy the weekend, everybody. It is Friday, in case you already forgot, because that does happen within a couple hours of all things happening here. So it is still Friday. It is the weekend coming. I hope that you all have a wonderful, wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. And